Podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined each and every week by the brightest minds in all of the gaming industry. With me, I have Adam Candee. I have Distin Gouker. It is free to follow them on Twitter, and you should do so at Adam Candee. That is 2 E's, no Y, at Distin Gouker. And if you really, really want to clog up your feed with some nonsense, you can follow me at Matt Brown M2. Of course, we're on all the places that you consume your podcast, so please go in, subscribe, rate, and review over at Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google. We're going to talk about New York. We are going to talk about Maryland. There's some big happenings in Arizona, and with that big happening, we get a follow-up press release about some big things going on there in Arizona as well. DraftKings is making a hire. Are they making another move? We'll talk about that. There's another acquisition by Bally's. They cannot quit spending money. And, of course, we'll get the state updates with Adam as well. Guys, before we kick things off here, episode number 99 of the pod here. We will be coming upon episode number 100 next week. Distin, I'm going to put the pressure on you to come through with a massive guest for episode number 100. I mean, I don't know, maybe President Biden, maybe, if you want to reach out to Obama, something, I don't know, but the pressure's on you. You have 1 week.
The fans seem to like it when you were gone. Maybe that's the treat.
I will leave for episode 100. There it is. You have it here. You heard it here first, folks. You don't have to worry about me being on episode 100. Adam, I'm sure you filled in admirably with that just beautiful voice of yours, and that is the reason why I'm no longer needed.
So you say you're sure I filled in admirably, so you didn't listen to last week's podcast. Got it. I'll take the message out of that.
Yeah, so I was in Mexico, and so,
Don't they have podcasts in
Mexico? Come on.
They have podcasts in Mexico. I'm like 99% sure that those get through customs.
Cell service and downloading things, it costs all this money. It's just there's lots of reasons why I didn't. All right, so let's kick things off here, guys. Listen, we always talk about New York on the podcast. We have to talk about New York, and we have to continue talking about New York so long as there are happenings going on. So let's kick off, as we always do here, with some New York news.
Well, it wouldn't be a week without New York. Would it, Matt? Would it, Distin? Of course not. New York is pretty much where we left them last week, which is not the worst thing in the world considering what they did with the week prior. The budget language has passed. New York state budget has been approved. So essentially the Cuomo version-ish of sports betting that made it through with the 2 licenses and the minimum of 4 platform providers, whatever that ultimately means, we still don't really know, made its way through. It will now be on the New York Gaming Commission to put together the rules and regulations, the bid process for who's going to ultimately get those licenses in New York. Really just all of the iterations of who might be able to offer sports betting in New York, because we still don't really know. And our Matthew Waters talked with Joe Adabo, one of the senators at the heart of the discussion, late last week, and said to him, well, can you help explain what this is, platform providers and licensees and what it actually is? And he said, well, I'm still kind of coming to grips with it myself. Okay, so if the man at the heart of things is not 100% sure yet, then it's hard for us to be 100% sure as to what it looks like. What we know is the next milestone that we have on the calendar is that they have to offer the bids by July 1st. That is, they have to open the process by July 1st, and whenever they do open it, there will be 30 days from that time for companies to put their bids in.
Distin, working in as long as we have in, online poker and DFS and whatever, we thought we had a pretty good idea of what a platform is, but now with this, trying to figure out what an actual platform is and how they are going to define platform seems to be really the big thing in all of this that everybody is talking about, because that is ultimately going to decide how this is all run.
Yeah, and I'm sorry for those tuning in just for clarity on what's going on in New York since the last podcast, because we've got nothing, and it may not come for a while. But there's a lot of things to be done in the regulations in terms of figuring out what this law actually means and putting it into reality. But yeah, the whole platform thing is the one that, at least in the industry is a buzz. Like how that is determined, whether a tech platform, whether a platform provider is an actual platform where all the tech lives, and it's either an all-in-one or a series of people working together, of companies working together to provide a platform, and then somebody, brands are on top of that platform. This is, the way we read it again, that's the way it should work if you're, going by the industry standard. If it's just licensees and sub-licensees, then we have something totally different. But, we read language we don't know. That's, we're still trying to spitball what is going to happen in New York. A good piece by Brad Allen, kind of breaking down who's in a good position or a bad position in New York in terms of getting in. Again, a lot of the usual suspects that we talk on this podcast and names that are in the lead. DraftKings, FanDuel certainly have a decent position. They were applauding the law last week, or the law that's coming, applauding Governor Cuomo for what they've done. At least DraftKings was. And so they think they have an inside track onto getting one of these licenses and being live in New York. And if you think you're one of the big dogs, you probably think you're going to have a compelling case when you get to this proposal process. So, but yeah, there's going to be a lot more reporting on New York. There's so much still to come, and it'll be interesting to follow exactly how this all shakes out.
Yeah, Adam, I mean, we don't really know what's been going on behind the scenes because we're not there. But when you look at DraftKings and FanDuel, if we do date this back a few years, we know that they were working hand in hand with all the lawmakers on the DFS stuff, and that they were basically in the room trying to get things passed with these various lawmakers and sitting in with them and explaining to them all the different things and why this was a good thing and why that. So at least I can understand their optimism with at least the fact that they, at one point, granted a few years ago, did have the ear of all of these lawmakers there as things were getting transformed and basically saving an entire industry and saving their companies along the way as well.
Well, what will be interesting to see, Matt, is what is the worth of all those lobbying dollars that have been spent at this point, because it's out of the hands of the lawmakers now, right? This goes over to the State Gaming Commission. And essentially what you're relying on is that those lawmakers hold some sway with the State Gaming Commission the same way they do over what law ultimately gets passed. Now, I think what you have to look at is that, let's say that you have been lobbying someone for 6 years going back to DFS, and look at the bill that you ultimately got. Like, you got a bill that really didn't represent your interests all that well, right? Like, so, that's not to say that anyone has not done their job. It's just that when the governor holds the bully pulpit, he ends up being the one in power to make the decisions, and ultimately this sports betting proposal ended up looking a lot more like his. That being said, there is nothing wrong with having a foot in the door when it comes to getting this thing, off the ground. But again, we still don't know what the definitions look like. And I think the interesting quote came from one of the sources that Brad Allen talked to, who said, the people who are in this room putting this together don't understand sports betting, but more importantly said they don't understand the digital economy.
Mm-hmm. Dustin, to put a bow on this, I mean, look, you've been following this as close as anybody since the beginning of everything. And when I say this, I'm not talking about New York in specific. I'm talking about just, the process of getting bills written, getting bills, voted on, getting bills passed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Where does this rank? I mean, I'm assuming it's not the nut low, because there are like single provider out there that we've talked about. So it's probably not the nut low, but it's got to be pretty far down there in your power rankings.
It's pretty bad, yeah. I mean, yeah. So the only thing they could have done worse is actually create a monopoly system. I think that's, if there had been a pure monopoly in New York, then we'd be talking the absolute nut low. At least we're not going to get that. But yeah, I mean, it's. We've both gotten this, Adam and I have both gotten this sentiment from other folks. Like, this was mashed up legislation from two different plans that mashed up at the last second, and the outcome was a mess of policy. Like, there's no, I don't think there's any disputing that. And, you can read it and see, like, we basically took Cuomo's idea over here, the legislative idea here, in the middle. It was not a pretty sight when they did all of that. So, yeah, it's, hopefully, we're hopeful, I guess, that there's so much wiggle room here in regulations in terms of figuring out how to do this. I think that we're hopeful that, the New York State Gaming Commission can figure this out, make it, maybe not as bad as we are fearing right now. But yeah, it's not good at all.
think the other piece that we have to keep in mind is that we're talking about this as a straightforward process. Okay, well, the rules and regulations we put together, there'll be a bid process. Here we go. What we haven't talked about is the fact that we still could be looking at legal challenges to this law, whether it's from tribal nations who feel like their exclusivity is being violated by the way this was put together. We saw a statement come out from from the Oneida Nation, making very clear that they feel like they were done wrong in this process. So that could still end up leading to a legal challenge. And the casinos who have been left to play landlord for servers at the profit cost of $5 million a year, so the profit opportunity of $5 million a year, might say, hey, you know what? We would like the chance to make more than $5 million a year and don't feel like we were done right in this process either. So we want to believe this will launch by the Super Bowl because that is the target date for the state of New York. But New York being New York and the market opportunity being what it is, I don't think anyone's letting it go down without a fight if they feel like their interests still have a chance of being represented.
As they say, there will be lawyers. There will be lawyers. Dustin, let's go to some more, a little bit better news here. Let's talk about Maryland because, hey, this is something that everyone can be happy about.
Yeah, man, wasn't this podcast last week? I was taking a victory lap on the number I hung on number of states that were legalizing. Here we sit less than a week later, and my number's going to get blown up. We're basically adding 2 states to the legal online sports betting market. Number one among those, Maryland. We're just waiting on a governor's signature there for all intents and purposes. Quickly passed a bill that's creating a fairly open, not even a fairly open, a very open market with a lot of licenses, 60 licenses, Class A and Class B. Everybody who wants to be in Maryland is going to be in Maryland. I think it's pretty clear. Reasonable tax rate. The whole thing looks pretty good. But yeah, we're looking at Maryland as the next one that's opening up. Again, everything. I'm not going to say this is perfect policy, but it's it's creating an open, competitive market, which at the end of the day is what is basically the best both for revenue, for operators, for the end consumer. So we're going to applaud that from that standpoint. And again, we're basically just a step away from having legal online sports betting in Maryland. Launch. Who knows exactly what time frame that will be, but we do have. We're basically there for Maryland, so you can pop champagne if you're in Maryland and excited about betting on sports.
Yeah, if we're sitting here in April, I assume everybody's at least going to throw that Super Bowl date out there, if not sooner than that. So I imagine that will always be the date that kind of gets floated.
Yeah, they said NFL kickoff. Again, who knows? When the rubber meets the road, we've seen everything from months to years to go from a law to regulation. We'll see.
Adam, we also have some interesting stuff. I mean, I'll admit, this was rapid as well, coming out of Arizona.
Yes, my former home state has passed a sports betting law. That is the news. And what happened with this was we went to hurry up and wait and wait and wait and go. That's exactly what it was. Like, we thought this legislation was moving straight along the line. And then what happened was it hit a committee on the Senate side in which it had an amendment made to it that put a historical horse racing bill. If you don't know what we're talking about, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on historical horse racing, but just you're betting on horse races that already happened. Godspeed. Yeah. But this was put into the bill, and essentially it was a poison pill. It's something that slowed the bill down, got stuck in committee for about a month, and then there were some behind-the-scenes conversations to help decouple those two bills, and the sports betting bill, freed of the HHR bill, was able to move forward, and it's on its way to Governor Doug Ducey, likely to be signed within the week. Interesting for me because this is the first state that I think we see a real serious compromise with gaming tribes in the state that has made it all the way to passage, right? This is sort of different than what we talked about in New York, where the Oneida feel like they've been cut out. It's different than Connecticut because we have an agreement in Connecticut. We just don't have laws passed yet to move it forward. But in Arizona, 20 licenses, 10 will be available to the gaming tribes, and there is a huge Native American presence in the state of Arizona. The other 10 available to the professional sports teams. So we could see deals like those that happened already with the Washington football team and FanDuel earlier on. it is one of the first truly hybrid markets we've seen in the United States. And I think that's going to be a fascinating dynamic to watch, in part because there haven't been a lot of tribal nations throughout the country who have wanted mobile sports betting. They have been clear about the fact that they've wanted it to be retail, but they're going to have the option to offer both. And so we will see how that ultimately plays out. To kind of jump ahead a little bit here to the item that we saw come out today, DraftKings has made an announcement that it has market access via its deal with the PGA Tour and through TPC Scottsdale, because they're going to try to open what is essentially a sports book on the course of TPC Scottsdale during the Waste Management Phoenix Open that also will be available at other times of year, but it's built around that tournament. And what's kind of crazy about it is that I asked DraftKings and said, hey, who holds the actual license in this case? And they said, you know what? We're still waiting for this to be worked out. Like, the law has passed, but Arizona doesn't even have a tax rate yet. Right? The tax rate is something that's going to be worked out by gaming regulators, and we're still going to have to figure out exactly who holds the license in Arizona, but DraftKings will be there when it happens.
And I think having the PGA Tour, Dustin, as a partner in this is a pretty powerful thing, especially in Arizona, when you consider, I mean, it's basically like the Gulf haven of the country, outside of Florida, at least on the west half of the country. I mean, I was connecting whenever I was going through last week. I connected in Phoenix. I counted 17 golf courses on my descent in from the plane. I mean, it's having the PGA behind you with this as well seems pretty huge. I mean, they already made that announcement, as Adam just said, that they're going to be the official betting partner of the Waste Management. Of course, the Waste Management, if you are unfamiliar, is the same weekend as the Super Bowl. So, hey, you get to market all of your stuff like leading into the Super Bowl, which is that Sunday. So a pretty good tournament to be the official betting partner of as well. So a pretty interesting kind of position, I think, here for DraftKings.
Yeah, I think even bigger picture is these league deals. That's a deal that manifested itself in a way that you couldn't have maybe forecast a while back, right? That we saw the PGA Tour getting involved with lobbying, but we didn't really know like a year or two ago that the PGA Tour would be lobbying for actual sports betting license or the venues that where PGA Tour's events are. So that's the fascinating part, is these deals could be leveraged, and we're seeing this in more and more states where the leagues and the teams and the venues are getting cut in, or they're lobbying for this act to have this ability to be the holders of a license. It's the way it's been running in Texas. They've been very involved. So you almost have to have maybe want to have one of these deals in your back pocket, so you might have an easier path to access down the road, because it's not always just casinos. We're ticking off, Arizona was a place where there's just tribal casinos, not the commercial casino interest. So the companies that have traditionally been able to tie land-based gaming to the sports betting, not necessarily involved in a way they are. So that's the bigger picture. Other bigger picture thing I see, going back to Adam and talking about the tribes, I mean, maybe a little speculative, but you look at this as a model that other states where there's tribal gaming can move this forward. We have Michigan casinos, and that was handled a little differently too. But look at California, and they made other concessions to tribes to let them expand their gaming, and then that let sports betting happen more widely. Tribes still involved, have other entities obviously involved in Arizona, but is that a path forward for California too? I don't know. I mean, it's much more complicated in California with card rooms and horse racing and everything else. But you can see, like, here's a way. If you want to get tribes involved, let them expand what they're doing. And that's a way that Arizona got this across the finish line, not just trying to ram sports betting down their throats. Like, here, you get something else, and then we have an open sports betting market too.
Adam, real quick to put a bow on this. I mean, listen, so we see this DraftKings, immediately coming out, talking about their partnership with the PGA. We know that the PGA has been super open to sports betting and stuff, but I think what we're starting to see here, and Dustin kind of alluded to it as well, is the leagues now, as far as instead of just straight up like, okay, give us money and give us a piece of it, give it whatever, I think they are starting to understand the value of just having sports betting and having it available for the interest of their sport, for the interest of their future television deals, which again, that's where they're making the real money anyway on all of this stuff, is these multi-billion-dollar television deals and stuff. So it does feel at least a little bit like the leagues are starting to understand that, like, okay, it's not necessarily getting money directly from the sports bet itself. We do now start to understand what we've been preaching since the beginning of all this, is that you are going to get the value regardless.
What ultimately greased those skids, Matt, was official league data. They went and these leagues lobbied for an integrity fee from the beginning, right? Go ahead and try to rebrand it the royalty. I'll still be here to remind you it was the integrity fee. And they tried to get this direct cut of sports betting revenue, and they struck out. The first year they went across the country, they went 0 for 7 in trying to get it in. They ultimately went up to about an 0 for 17 in trying to get anybody to include it in a bill. And when all was said and done, they realized no one was going to just give them a cut of the money. What they did was they rebranded as official league data. They came back the second year and said, well, in order for you to have the best data to grade wagers, you need to give us a cut of the money that way. Once they were comfortable with that, and that became something that took hold across the country, then I think they were willing to move on to these other ways of maximizing their partnerships, right? They secured the one way that they knew that they had to be able to get their cut. But now they've been more willing to look at this as, okay, where can we partner? Where can we find other synergies? Again, be careful what you wish for, because you come with a lot of questions as to the integrity of not only your league, but your franchises. I mean, you talked about the fact that the Super Bowl is going to be the same weekend, of course, as the Waste Management Phoenix Open. We're looking only a couple of years ahead for that to be in Arizona, right? It's going to be in Glendale, just a few miles away from TPC Scottsdale. And when we dealt with Arizona first getting its legislation into the cycle this year, we got a lot of questions from people that said, wait, the Cardinals are going to have a sports betting license? That's ridiculous. Like, that, where's the integrity in that? Now we know it's not actually the Cardinals doing this, the operation of sports betting. It's whatever book they partner with, but perception is a powerful thing here. And so as they get deeper into these partnerships, whether it's through TV deals or anything else, it is something that is going to have to get serious consideration as to being very, very careful with optics.
So, Dustin, we talk about the press release that came through this morning about DraftKings and the Waste Management and the PGA Tour and things like that. We got this wasn't a press release, but this was a story that was released through Axios about DraftKings and a hire that they made that came along with a bunch of speculation towards their future plans.
Yeah, top level, DraftKings is a chief media officer, a former senior vice president actually coming over from Verizon. I mean, this is obviously fascinating news that, exec level C-suite person getting a job just to deal with media. DraftKings, this is not media relations. This is, creating media content in the news and just content in general. So that's how serious DraftKings is taking this. We already talked about in past podcasts the deal with VSiN to take over that and be DraftKings is taking over that. And then the speculation here is that they're not done on the acquisition front. The Action Network, somebody who's been very aggressive about pursuing the sports betting market in the U.S., trying to become one of the main sources of information about sports betting, and DraftKings looking at purchasing that as well. Would be interesting. They're trying to cut away some of the customer funnel. Just go be the media yourself. DraftKings has been doing this for a long time. They've been creating content on their own site. Deal with Vox for DK Nation. Lots going on. They've long seen this writing on the wall of like, let's just be why just depend on other people to write about us when we can just create the content ourselves. And this is I think a hat tip to that they're going to continue doing that, continue growing, and continue pursuing that as a major part of their strategy in acquiring customers around the country.
Yeah, Adam, this was it was pretty interesting, I think, just from an aspect of you and I knowing how vast of a company Action Network is, how many employees they have, and how big of an acquisition this might be, with the rumored number around $100 million for VSiN. you start to kind of wonder what it would cost to get Action Network, and then you start to realize like what type of investment and how serious DraftKings is about this whole media side of things. Because I mean, they're already $100 million in, and you have to assume Action Network would be a multiple of that.
It would be a multiple just on what the multiples look like in this industry right now, right? I mean, multiples in this industry are, going off a trampoline. They're way more on projection than they are on actual revenue. So, yeah, our Brad Allen talked to one source who said 50-50s, maybe the look at a deal like Action Network. It's a rumor that we've heard for a long time. Above and beyond that, I think consider also that this new chief media officer for DraftKings came from Verizon. We know Verizon has worked closely with the NFL. We know DraftKings is working closely with the NFL. So you would think that there are some natural relationships to be leveraged in that space as well. So, yeah, you talk about the multiples, and there's a reason that DraftKings not only did a stock issue, within the past 12 months, but just went out there and offered debt as well to be purchased up, because they are going out there and trying to gobble up everything that they can. It's not just them. FanDuel is trying to do a similar thing. They purchased, their interest in SportsGrid and, trying to do the same thing as well. It's a lot easier to make your own content than it is to try to convince somebody else to run it.
Yeah, no, and we talked about we'll talk about Bally's a little bit later, but we talked about the Bally's strategy as well, going with the media and stuff. So it seems like this is something a lot of these companies have decided is going to be the long-term strategy for them in all of this. Adam, let's talk about Maine and North Carolina, shall we?
Well, let's always talk about Maine. It's a beautiful state. We've seen legislative action in Maine that actually surprised me a little bit. Another bill has been put forward in Maine for legalizing sports betting. Same principles involved last year from the legislative side, but remember that this was one of the stranger sports betting episodes of the legal era, where at the very end of 2019, legislators in Maine passed a bill for mobile sports betting, very low license fees, very industry-friendly bill. There was a quirk in the law that allowed the governor of Maine to essentially put the bill in her pocket, carry it forward months until the legislature came back in, not do anything about it. She ultimately decided to veto the bill, and it came with some bizarre reasoning around the fact of the idea of a slippery slope. Well, now what if we had betting on spelling bees and county elections and all of the things that we all know here that gaming regulators would never give the first cent of attention to. So now we see that after she lobbied against overriding the veto, which it looked like was going to happen, still the same governor, but here comes legislation again in Maine. So it'll be interesting to watch to see if there's any better chance of it getting through this year, because it seems like the same roadblocks are in place. Now, in North Carolina, roughly a month after we saw the tribal sports books that had been approved for nearly 2 years finally open up for retail at the Cherokee property for Harrah's, now we also see that a bill to modernize the industry has been put in, legal sports betting on a mobile basis throughout North Carolina. Again, just a bill that's been introduced, hasn't really gone anywhere as yet, but one sort of old new state for us to look at and one sort of new old state for us to look at.
Dustin, we talk numbers here on this here podcast, so let's talk some numbers from Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, and then we can kind of speculate on what these numbers might look like in the future now that we're going to put the toothpaste back in the tube.
It's kind of nice and symmetrical that we have all the I states to go over. I'll start with Iowa. We don't talk about Iowa a ton, but they had a record amount of handle in March. Maybe not shocking. They just opened up from in-person registration, so that market is still really very new in terms of its age. If it's really only 3 months into mobile registration where you can register anywhere in the state. So good to see that, and really kind of hammers home the idea that remote registration way better than in-person registration, because now the throttle is off for what's going on in Iowa. So good numbers there. Indiana, we got their March numbers as well. It was not a record, but we saw an uptick from February to March in Indiana, $316 million in handle. Again, this is bucking a trend. I think we made this pretty clear in past podcasts for February, but February, fewer days, fewer NFL games. We're going to see, even in markets that are still maturing, we're going to see a pullback February to March, but we didn't see that. Obviously, as I'm sure many of our listeners know, all of the NCAA tournament games played in Indiana, college basketball crazy states, and this is maybe not shocking at all that this happened in Indiana. We actually saw a little growth into March there. So other one, Illinois, we just got their February numbers. They actually rose to become the third biggest market for sports betting in February, 509 million, just a little bit ahead of Pennsylvania. First time they've done that. Again, a pullback from February to January, from February as compared to January, but again, a natural one, I think. And again, we'll beat this one over your head. Still, you get tired of it. But in-person registration is back on in Illinois. Moving forward, we're going to start seeing that show up, and probably will result in a drawback of growth there. So interesting numbers. We're going to be seeing. We're going to see a slowdown here, obviously. April here through the start of the NFL season. These are slower months for sports betting, even though we have NBA and NHL. But these are kind of the dog days. We're going to see live betting increase, and that might help things. But I think the sense here is these months in the middle here are going to be kind of slower, as just like they've always been historically in Nevada.
Yeah, and we look at when we look at the Illinois numbers. I mean, what do we think as far as we understand it's going to naturally slow? I mean, we're in the dog days. We're kind of like we've gotten to the NBA fatigue point in the season where people kind of tune out until the playoffs get a little bit closer. And baseball's a really long season, so it's not one of those huge spikes or anything like we see with some of these other sports. So yeah, I mean, the numbers are definitely going to go down, but the way that we've continued to talk about, the way that you increase an industry and the way that you grow an industry is to make things easier on people and to make things easier for them to sign up for accounts and to bet and things like that. Well, we know now that, with them having to go back into the casino here and do that in person to sign up and bet, I mean, we're going to get a fall off anyway, but are we expecting this could fall off a cliff, right?
I mean, you're just not going to see growth, I don't think.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to see the numbers are not going to keep going up. You basically have the customers you already acquired, and that's it.
Right. You're playing with what you already have, and yeah.
And maybe you increase engagement with those folks. You're going to have them in. You can reactivate them for NFL season, et cetera, et cetera. It's not end of days, but other markets are going to continue to grow because they have access to signing people up from wherever. The number of people who are going to a casino in Illinois to sign up for a sports betting account is not a high number. That's not good. You're obviously not anywhere near having maximized the Illinois market at this point, with only really several months of this going on. And they're going to try to activate people, get them into the casinos around Chicago or in wherever else. But we're not. It's gonna the numbers are going to be where they are. We're going to see. It's just not going to grow vis-a-vis. We're going to see growth in other markets. We're going to see Illinois not really grow as much. They're going to grow just because they have new customers,
right.
But it's the floor. Wait, which is it? Ceiling or floor? The ceiling is lower right now because you're just not acquiring new customers in any kind of great numbers.
And Adam, not to just continue and beat a dead horse here, but when you look at this thing with Illinois, like with where we are in the sports calendar as well, right? So since the NBA season is still a ways away from the playoffs, but it also is in the kind of the downswing, we have Major League Baseball, which has already started. And again, 162 games, not really a ton going on here. We don't have marquee boxing matches anymore. We don't have, so like getting a person to physically get up off of their couch and get in their car and go sign up for an account until NFL season rolls around, where, all the games are played on Sunday, so maybe someone will make a special trip on a Friday or Saturday to go and sign up for an account and whatnot. But, there aren't really a lot of other reasons on the sports calendar for people to go and sign up between now and September.
No, there aren't. The question, I think, for us becomes the people who were the most enthusiastic about wanting to bet on sports have signed up for accounts. They've probably signed up for multiple accounts. They've probably gotten multiple bonuses. They are in. It's going to be a matter of retaining them, as you mentioned earlier. So I think what you end up seeing here is that, as assuming vaccinations continue to allow governors to open things up, I think you missed the opportunity to get some of the casuals who might be going out to Wrigley Field for a game, who might be showing up at a Chicago Bulls potential playoff game, right? You missed the chance to activate some more recreational customers. I think the people who really cared and really wanted in had months to get in. Mm-hmm. And so those people are in and probably staying in because they don't have to do anything else, right? They have their mobile account. Nothing changes for them. I think what you end up missing is you miss a chance to bring in some new customers. And as we've talked about last week, even though you didn't listen, was that a company like BetMGM, which was in the pipeline to get its application approved, that's the real loser here, is a company that was still trying to get into the market and still trying to get itself going. Now, I mean, the lock is back on the door, and you're not going to see a change in this, right? Like, this is not something, barring a major, major shift in the wrong direction for the pandemic, that's going to change again. Because for anybody to make a change at this point would essentially be a point where we have to admit the political stuff that led to this happening
bad in the first place. Right.
And no one's going to admit that, right?
Yeah.
The one excuse that we had was COVID. And it's a good excuse because it was a real thing to have to say people should not be traveling to the casinos. But it allowed Governor Pritzker to work around the ridiculous part that had been put into the law requiring in-person registration with the nanny boo-boo to DraftKings and FanDuel. So now that that's been, sort of tubed back in, as you said, with the toothpaste, now at this point, I think everybody's just got to sit and wait.
Dustin, we've talked about a lot of spending sprees here inside this industry, and here we have Bally's coming in yet again and spending more. I mean, I would love to have this bank account that Bally's has right now. I mean, it is like it seems to be never ending. We get the news. I think it was Monday, that they have gone in and made a purchase that will get them in the Las Vegas market. Now, I say the Las Vegas market because they were already owned a casino in North Nevada, but as we know, with the in-person registration requirements that are in Nevada, you're not getting anybody that lives in Las Vegas. It's the biggest city. It's where all the sports bettors live and things like that. And so they now, it seems, are going to get themselves in the Las Vegas market.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The words just kind of fail me now for the things that Bally's buys. Like, it's literally a segment now, right? It's like, what did Bally's buy this week?
What did Bally's buy this week?
And we're not even, and yeah, I mean, Bally's wants to sponsor us, I guess, on top of that, to talk about all the stuff they do. We're going to talk about it anyway, but that's a joke. Don't you're not going to sponsor us, but but we really are talking about them every week buying something, buying Tropicana from a real estate arm. Basically, this is called Gaming and Leisure Properties. This has been a real estate arm of Penn National, actually. Penn National operated the Trop in Vegas, and basically cutting ties now entirely with that. So $308 million to buy the Trop in Vegas. And yeah, I mean, their appetite for buying things absolutely knows no bounds at this point. It's you get yourself into Vegas, you can obviously probably deploy a sports betting brand there. I'd assume that's part of what they want to do, and just continuing to dominate the world. Some of the at some point, I mean, land-based obviously makes a ton of sense too in terms of this is a property that probably, I mean, you guys know more living there than I do, but probably underutilized in terms of the Vegas market. There's things that could be done with that, outside of the sports betting realm for sure.
Yeah, Adam, I mean, I guess the other real news for people that live in Vegas is this will be the first introduction of actually a brand new brand of sports betting in quite some time. Now, there's rumors Resorts World has gone with IGT, and maybe that's new to a lot of people that don't know that they already run the Boyd app. So, and because Boyd's not incredibly popular amongst the locals here or whatever, but I mean, with the BetWorks back end with this, it'll be kind of the first new entry in quite some time for Las Vegas bettors.
Once there's an actual product, which, the one thing that we have to keep mentioning when it comes to Bally bets is that there is no Bally bets. Like there eventually there will be, and it's coming, but there's that. And, of course, as we've talked about, the former Hard Rock, the Virgin property opens. Betfred will be there, just not yet. Essentially, you've got a counter and signs that say, come check us out later at Betfred in Las Vegas right now. So
they're very nice signs, though. They are.
They're very,
yes,
they're very nice signs.
They're
But,
very nice
you know,
signs.
as Dustin mentioned, it's an underutilized corner in that MGM owns the other 3 corners.
Right.
Like MGM has basically created that monopoly. You've had this property that's been sitting there sort of as a stepchild for quite a long time. At the Trop. I mean, the Trop was best known over the last couple of years as the place you used to be able to park for free to go to T-Mobile Arena or MGM Grand Garden. They ended that. So now you go next door to the Hooters. But anyway, you know, when it comes to maximizing that property, I think the other thing that they're going to have to think about is branding, just because you have Bally's, which is owned by the Caesars Corporation, right?
Right.
And then you will have Bally owning Tropicana. So I'm interested to see how they ultimately work that out.
Yeah, that will certainly be interesting. But again, as a Nevada sports bettor, as a Las Vegas specific sports bettor, the thought, I understand it's down the line, but the thought of actually having a shiny new toy is actually pretty awesome.
Keep in mind, it's a secondhand toy. No matter what you get, it's a secondhand toy. Just like many other sports books that are in Nevada have the Nevada version of their app, which looks like the communist China version. Then there'll be something.
All right, Adam, take us home with all the other state updates.
No, I'm going to yell more about Nevada apps. No, so Connecticut, we continue to see movement there in Connecticut, as we know we have the agreement between Governor Ned Lamont and the 2 gaming tribes, Mashantucket, Pequot, and the Mohegan. Essentially what you have now is you need some enabling legislation to go through the legislature. That's taking its steps. That is largely expected to be, I don't want to say formality, because nothing in Connecticut has been formality over the course of years trying to get things done, but this is by far the farthest down the line that we've been in terms of having Connecticut sports betting. Keep an eye on that in particular, because where do a lot of folks who work in New York City live? They live in Connecticut. So as we look at what kind of product New York ultimately puts out, a lot of New York City workers live in Connecticut. A lot of them live in New Jersey. There is real pressure for the New York products to be really good, because there are going to be people who could choose to bet on other legal platforms if they want to do that. Elsewhere, I mean, look, there are always rumblings around the big states, but the rumblings are getting a little bit louder in Florida, to the point where I guess we probably have to pay a bit more attention to the discussions that have been going on between Governor DeSantis and the Seminole tribe down in Florida, as it certainly sounds like there could be progress toward allowing sports betting to be part of a larger agreement between the tribe and the state. Stay tuned. That's basically what I would say about that one, because as we've seen with Illinois, as we've seen with New York, as we've seen with California, it takes a lot less to derail something than it does to get it through. So we will keep an eye on what's going on there. Tennessee, we continue to see there still is a bill in place in Tennessee that is being debated to limit the ability to place a payday loan and bet at a payday loan center in the same place. This bill has been pushed back a couple of times, but it is still in process. And along those lines, it appears the situation between the Tennessee Lottery and Action 24/7 might have run its course at this point, because the Tennessee Lottery screwed up the process for trying to discipline Action 24/7, and earlier this week essentially said no. The judge said no, you can't go back and redo the process. You screwed up the process. Now it'll be just a question of figuring out if there's any more that can happen here with Action. I don't think there will be.
That is, isn't that quite a shame? That is not good for anyone in this situation, for sure. Guys, as always, if you want to take in the written form of everything that we talk about here on the podcast, head over to LegalSportsReport.com. Take in all the great work that Adam and his team over there are doing. And again, we are on all the places that you listen to your podcast. So go in, subscribe, rate, and review. We really do appreciate that. Help us climb those charts and help more people find this here podcast. If you want to follow Adam and Dustin on the Twitter machine, at Adam Candee, 2 E's, no Y, at Distin Gouker, at Matt Brown M2 if you hate yourself. For Adam or Dustin, I'm Matt. Talk to you guys next week.